In October 1943, this rice-husking factory on the outskirts of Trieste became the only Nazi internment and extermination camp in Italy. Today, La Risiera is a museum in which memory of this dreadful period is being conserved and passed on to young generations. Built in 1898 in San Saba, a suburb of Trieste, La Risiera became a camp through which transited the prisoners bound for Germany and Poland, as well as an extermination camp for political prisoners, partisans and Jews. The Nazis deported more than 700 Trieste Jews to extermination camps, less than 20 returned. The actual museum opened in 1975 after the architect Romano Boico restored the site.
The actual monument of the Risiera di San Saba has preserved a part of the abandoned factory, and the architect who designed the monument, Romano Boico, expresses the squalor in the abandoned buildings and the structure made of concrete, which together with the nudity of these walls, gives the impression of confinement, of a place one cannot escape.
Romano Boico puts an accent on the most distressing sections that remained, such as the internment building and the death cells, as well as those destroyed by the fleeing Nazis, the oven and the chimney.
One enters the building through a corridor, a long corridor that takes the visitor to the courtyard. There was a building used for the elimination of the bodies of the prisoners murdered by the Nazis. The Nazis blew these buildings up while fleeing, and the architect wanted to mark the sacredness of these spots through the steel pavements.
After the capitulation of Italy in September 1943, the region of Friuli, Venezia Giulia, to which Trieste belongs, became utterly important for the Nazis as it allowed them to organize their expansion in southern Europe and the Mediterranean Sea. Trieste then became the theater of some of the cruelest Nazi operations.
Today, in Trieste, more particularly, there is a surge of interest and sensibility towards these topics. At the time the museum was inaugurated in the 70s, there was a political disagreement and a very divided memory of the facts from World War II. The national sensibility towards these topics that was developed in the 80s and the 90s shed a new light on the complex history of Trieste. Schools played an important part too in helping the new generation, but also the adults, to have a new approach on these subjects.
Despite the fact that it is dedicated to conserving the memory of this doleful period, the museum occasionally wakes up from its historical role and gets to play a part in everyday life of its visitors.
Even we, who work in a museum, get to live some surprising situations. For example, thanks to a document, a very long roll of paper that a deported lady kept and that was exhibited in the museum, a pupil that was visiting with his class recognized the name of a friend of his neighbor who survived the deportation herself and lived for many years after the war in another town in Italy. This was the occasion for the two ladies who survived the camp to meet 60 years after the war.
More than 100,000 people from all over the world pay visit every year to the Risiera.
The first time I came here, I got chills because I think even today one can feel the spirit of the people who suffered here.
Through the architectural project as well as the exhibition, the visitors come into direct contact with the history of the Risiera. Miloš Krivokapić, Gen 1, Trieste.